I used to think reputations broke with the noise of a dropped plate. Something shatters, everyone looks, and that's it. You're the guy sweeping up while the room stares. But that's not how it works when the spotlight is money and the stage is philanthropy. In that world, reputations don't shatter, they erode. There's a script, there's lighting, there are people whose job it is to clap at the right time. The trick is learning the difference between applause and permission. I'm Marcus, 38. I run systems for a warehouse out by Goose Island, conveyors, scanners, squawking zebra printers that spit labels like they're trying to win a race they never asked to run. If a line goes down, I'm the one with a flashlight and a laptop coaxing temperamental metal to do what it promised. I believe in checklists, torque specs, and the kind of fixes you can show your boss in an email with bullet points. My wife was my wife, is Karina, who knows how to make a room fall in love with a mission statement. She's a fundraiser, a PR person for causes with brochures thicker than small books and donor walls that look like modern art. The first time I saw her work a room, I understood why billionaires hire people like her. She can make money feel like virtue. Her father, Victor Hartley, built his name welding rebar before he could afford a suit, then built an empire putting the rebar inside new skylines. In Chicago, his last name isn't just a line on a building, it's a wing at a hospital, a program at the Art Institute, a scholarship at UIC, a plaque set into stone so permanently pigeons could use it as a meeting point. When he shifted from steel to giving, he did it with the precision of a man who knew exactly what beams hold. We buried him on a wind-chapped October morning at 4th Presbyterian, the kind of cold that remembers your bones. Karina wore a black dress that swallowed light and stood very straight beside her mother, who looked deflated, like a party balloon on day 3. I did the things men do at funerals, carried what needed carrying, said I'm sorry for your loss to people who'd never had one, used my hands like I'd forgotten where to put them. The reading of the will happened 3 days later in an office on Wacker with windows so clean they were morally ambiguous. The family lawyer, a woman named Eleanor whose voice had the kindness of a winter coat, laid out pages like a croupier lays out cards. Victor had been generous to institutions, shock, but conservative with his personal estate. To Karina, a trust capped at $1 million, structured for income, conservative investments, the kind of cautious money designed to pay for nice eggs and sensible accountants. To her mother, the penthouse on Lakeshore Drive and an annuity that would keep the lights on until the lake froze for the last time. To me, the son-in-law, a line item so short I thought I misread it. See Addendum C. Karina's jaw tightened at $1 million. It wasn't nothing, but I knew what that room considered enough. She kept her face trained on Eleanor like it was a mark on stage, and this was the scene where the actor drinks tea instead of poison. Eleanor flipped to Addendum C like a magician revealing a card you already knew you'd chosen. Mr. Hartley created what he called a morals clause. She didn't wince when she said it, his words. It stipulates that, for 18 months following his death, no member of the immediate family shall, again, his words, publicly bring disgrace to the family or to the foundation through matters of personal conduct, including but not limited to romantic entanglements that conflict with foundation governance or donor relations. I felt the room tilt like a boat taking a wave. Karina's eyes slid to me and away, a movement so small you could mistake it for a blink. Eleanor continued, if such disgrace occurs, Miss Hartley's bequest is automatically diverted to the Hartley Animal Welfare Fund. Karina's head snapped to the lawyer, eyes gone hard. Moreover, in that event, a separate, currently reserved pool of assets, Mr. Hartley called it the closed room, shall pass to Mr. Marcus Lane, conditional upon his timely documentation of the breach to the satisfaction of the independent trustee. Conditional, Karina repeated, the word dripping. Yes, Eleanor said, conditional. Not a bounty, Mr. Lane. She looked at me because men need that beheading of illusions, a safeguard. Mr. Hartley also left something for you. She slid a small envelope with my name in his square handwriting across the table. It wasn't an expensive envelope. Victor was a man who didn't buy beauty where competence would do. We rode the elevator down in silence. At the curb, the wind tried to take the envelope. I held it like it contained a small animal. Karina lit a cigarette like her father had never lectured her about lungs, a habit she kept only for stress and theater porches. I didn't know he'd do that, she said. Which part? I asked. The dog money, or the part where I become a compliance officer for your grief. That is not what this is, she said too fast. He's punishing me for not being a son. He loved you more than any son, I said, and knew I believed it. He also loved rules and optics. She exhaled smoke toward the river and laughed once. Optics, she said. That's rich from a man who went to every ribbon cutting like it was mass. Look, I said low, we can do this without hurting each other. We? She said. I haven't done anything. Back home in Ukrainian village, at the oak table we'd rescued from a thrift store and sanded on a Saturday that smelled like coffee and sawdust, I opened the envelope. Inside was a key card, a sticky note, and a one-page letter. The key card had Hartley Tower Library printed on it. The sticky note read, in block capitals, documents show themselves in light. The letter was short. Marcus, you know how to listen to machines. People are louder, but their patterns are the same. I'm not asking you to stalk, I'm asking you to notice what's already on paper. Donors are not kings, they're gravity. The foundation can lose its balance if we pretend gravity is optional. If she embarrasses us, if she embarrasses herself, don't make a scene. Don't become a story. Take what's public, turn on the lights, and put it where the right eyes will see. The rest is what it is. As for the closed room, I don't reward hurt, I reward stewardship. If you do this right, not loud, it becomes yours. If you set fire to the house, it doesn't. Be better than me. VH. And I went to Hartley Tower at dawn because that's when people with keys to rooms they shouldn't have are least likely to need them. The library wasn't shelves of books, but a glass-walled conference room lined with cabinets and a brass lamp. Victor loved because it reminded him of rooms where people still wrote thank you notes by hand. The key card unlocked a drawer that looked like it had been designed to hide in plain sight. Inside, a manila folder, a hard drive the size of a wallet, and a VHS tape in a white sleeve. I blinked at it. Victor had been a champion of old tools that still do their job. In the corner, under a dust cover, sat a VCR like an accusation. The tape was labeled Policy Roll, Board 2018. I slid it in and hit play. Static, then a video of Victor in that room 5 years younger, speaking with Karina. The camera angle said automatic record, not spy. He was going over a draft set of foundation policies. Conflict of interest, gift acceptance, donor access to staff. His voice was steady, tired. This won't age well, Dad, Karina said on the tape. People need to feel we're accessible. They can feel access, Victor said, without having actual access to my staff's private lives. There's no staff in my private life, Karina said too quickly, and I saw it. The hint of offense that means the defense is preloaded. Victor looked at her for a long few seconds, then said, show me, by your choices. The drive's folders were labeled with dates and names that matched rooms I knew. Field Museum Gala, Drake Hotel Donor Suite, A Shed Aquarium After Hours. I didn't open anything that wasn't mine to see. I made a different kind of list, what could be reached without breaking anything. Calendar invites sent to general lists, security logs accessible with permission, rideshare receipts if you paid with company cards, policies a donor could pick up at a lobby desk if the receptionist liked you. I started with the policy. The Hartley Foundation had a document on its website that read like a marriage between caution and PR. Staff and board members shall avoid relationships that create conflicts of interest or the appearance thereof, it said, which is policy language for don't sleep with people whose names are on our checks. There was a line about donor suites, small rooms at venues set aside for cultivation, and an explicit ban on using them for anything that could compromise the dignity of the foundation or its mission. I requested access to building logs for the Hartley office from Janelle, the head of compliance, a woman who read emails all the way to the end and had that serene face people get from spending long hours next to printers. I need to reconcile board access privileges with event hours, I wrote like I spoke their language because I did. She replied with a password-protected PDF and a note. You always did Victor's dirty work with clean hands, Marcus. I assume this is the same. It wasn't a conspiracy, it was a favor. When people cheat, they prefer the frictionless path. In Donorland, frictionless is a security badge that works late and doesn't ask why you're on the concourse level at 11:13 a.m. The log showed Dean Wexler, board member, asset manager with a hairline like an ego badging into donor suites at the United Center after charity nights that often ended with Instagram posts about community. Rideshare receipts and the foundation's monthly statements tucked under board transportation, mapped with eerie precision to Karina's calendar blocks titled Debrief. And debrief is the one word in fundraising that describes everything and nothing all at once. I didn't hire a PI, I didn't scan her texts, I didn't set traps, I built a timeline the way you build a small bridge. Date, location, who had access, what the policy said. I printed the pages on a cheap laser in my office because my office didn't feel like part of the story. I included screenshots of the policy annotated like a high school English paper. I kept my sentences bald. February 19, Donor Suite B accessed at 11:42 p.m. by Wexler. Foundation car called at 1009 a.m. to the side entrance. Karina's calendar, Debrief United Center. Policy 4.3. No staff shall accompany board or donors into donor suites after scheduled event hours absent senior compliance approval. Compliance approval not logged. The gala, what people whispered about as the bow benefactors would never admit they loved the name, was scheduled for March at the Field Museum. The night before, I went to see the room. It was a good room to be seen in. Sue the T-Rex loomed in the hall like a chaperone who knows too much. The caterer walked around with a headset and a Bluetooth speaker like a general leading shrimp tails into battle. I stood on the mezzanine and tried to imagine the opulent choreography and the places where reality would leak through. On a banner, a Knight of Bridges danced beside a list of sponsors that could fund small countries. Karina had been replaying a revised script at home for weeks. Dean has ideas for a capital campaign we're not thinking big enough about, she said at breakfast over toast. I burned because I was reading her face instead of the toaster. He knows people who can move needles. Needles move when you push them, I said, failing at metaphors and marriage. Not like this, she said, smiling at a middle distance where applause lives. Her dress for the gala arrived in a box that looked like it came from a country where cardboard costs more. She tried it on and turned in the mirror. The dress was the color of a lake in heat and cut like a dare. I could say I didn't feel anything, but that would be a lie. Love is a muscle that can lift things it shouldn't. Is this one of those nights where you need me to say I'm proud of you, I asked, or one of those nights where you need me to be quiet and carry stuff? Both, she said, and kissed me without landing. By then, Janelle had invited me for coffee off campus. We met at a place in River North where the baristas make pour-overs with the seriousness of surgeons. She wore a coat that said she'd learned about winter in a city that doesn't sugarcoat it. You're not the first man to walk in with a folder, she said. You were the first who didn't bring screenshots of texts or grainy photos from a parking lot. I brought a policy, I said, and times. She sipped and nodded. Victor trusted me to keep the rails on. He also trusted his daughter to dance near the edge without falling off the stage. That's an unfair trust. I don't want to humiliate her, I said, hearing my voice and hating it a little for how naked it was. Good news, she said dry. Policies don't humiliate people. They only feel like they do when someone uses them like a mirror. What do? I asked. You give me the mirror, she said. We hold it up. The media trap Victor left behind wasn't a hack or a bomb. It was a video he'd recorded 2 years before he died that the AV team played every year out of custom, a minute of him talking about why the foundation existed. He didn't love the word legacy because he thought it sounded like a perfume, but he liked reminding donors that money was supposed to be heavier than vanity. The head of AV, a kid named Nate with a sleeve of tasteful tattoos and a knack for making HDMI cables behave, told me, "We run it before the live program." The house hushes for him, even now. It's kind of magical. Don't change a thing, I said, but when Janelle asks, make sure what she hands you gets on screen, it'll look like policy slides. It is policy slides. You're not going to, he began and trailed, because you're not going to humiliate your wife is not something a person can ask and get an honest answer they deserve. I'm not going to put anything on that screen I wouldn't want my mother seeing, I said, which isn't a legal standard, but sometimes is the only one we have. The night of the gala, Lakeshore Drive was a ribbon of headlights, and the Field Museum glowed like something out of a city brochure. We parked by the south entrance, the one staff use when they're not supposed to be seen arriving like staff. Inside, the room was all glass and bone. Karina kissed cheeks and syruped her voice to donors who got younger every year. Dean moved through the crowd like a man who had replaced fear with charm and never looked back. I recognized the eye contact he gave her, a focus designed to be mistaken for respect. We took our seats at table 12, the kind of table number that meant you were not the most important people in the room, but close enough to hear the important ones breathe. The program began. Victor appeared on screen, suit crisp, voice as stubborn as a door that never stops fitting. He talked about steel and the men who placed it, about a city that falls apart if someone doesn't check the bolts, about duty to the mission over the room. Then the screen changed. Not to scandal, not to a doorbell cam, not to photographs that would make phones rise like prairie grass. The Hartley Foundation Code of Conduct filled the screen in a tasteful serif. Someone tittered. Policy is boring. Then the slides moved like a mind map. Conflict of interest, donor suite usage, board access hours, each paired with a calendar square and a tiny timeline. No names, no faces, just black bars where names would live in discovery. The screen did not accuse, it explained. It showed how dignity is maintained by doors that close when they should. Karina stiffened beside me. Dean's jaw tightened in a way only men who practice their jawlines in mirrors can do. Janelle stood near the rear, her face calm. On the dais, the board chair smiled like everything was normal because it was, technically. He looked out at a room full of people used to being flattered and waited for the applause line he always got after Victor's video. It came, thinner. People clapped the way polite people clap when they've been told to wait for dessert. After, the donors migrated to the donor suites because even a policy slideshow can't compete with scotch and murmured access. I did not follow. I walked to a hallway that smelled like industrial cleaner and waited near a door nobody used unless they'd memorized the backstage map. Janelle found me. You did it, she said, careful with pronouns. You did it, I said. I was just the courier. We're initiating an internal review, she said, which is compliance speak for we're going to call it an inquiry because the law likes it better that way. Karina found me 15 minutes later. She was something rarer than angry, scared. What did you do, she asked, voice low and venom light, because she saves venom for donors or himself. I gave your father's people his policy, I said, and made sure the room heard it. You tried to destroy me, she said. No, I said. I tried to show you to yourself before someone crueler did it for me. She laughed, a sound that used to be a bell and had become a blade. Dean can fix this. Then let him try, I said. He tried. The next morning, a PR email went out to board and major donors about clarifying our policies and doubling down on our values. It said nothing that mattered and therefore everything. By noon, Janelle had requested access logs from 3 venues and a month's worth of rideshare statements. By 2, she had what I'd had. By 5, the board chair called Dean into a meeting and used words men like him only hear when the room has decided to replace their portrait. Step aside. For the good of the mission, we're grateful for your past service. Karina called at 6 and said, don't do anything else. I'm not doing anything, I said and meant it. There's a violence to letting gravity do the work. She slept somewhere else that night. I slept on our side of the apartment like a man trying not to spill. In the morning, I made eggs and read the letter Victor had written me 3 more times until the words felt like a wrench that finally fits. 2 weeks of process followed. The foundation released a polite statement about transitions and governance. Janelle sent me a note. We did not say names, we did say ours. She included a copy of a new sheet donors had to sign to get their fancy credentials, a promise not to use spaces for anything inconsistent with mission or respect. It was nothing, and it was not nothing. Eleanor called. The trustee has reviewed your submission, she said. They find that Miss Hartley's actions constituted a public disgrace under the clause. Karina was in the room when I took that call, folding a sweater that had only ever been folded for photographs. Her hands moved like they belonged to a different woman. What does that mean, I asked, because men like me ask questions we already know the answers to when the answers sound like cliffs. It means Miss Hartley's bequest as specified is diverted to the Animal Welfare Fund, Eleanor said, voiced that winter coat again. It means the closed room opens to you. Karina put the sweater down and stared at me like I'd taken something with my own hands. You wanted this, she said. I wanted truth, I said. You knew this clause existed and planned to reveal anyway. Planned to reveal, she echoed with a bitter snort. I was going to announce a campaign co-chair. That is not a reveal. The difference is math, I said, not morals. She grabbed her purse and left with the quiet slam of a door that remembers louder ones. The closed room wasn't a room. It was a set of accounts, shares, and boring companies that make the kind of money you only notice if you count a lot. There were stipulations written by Victor that made sense when you remembered who he was. I couldn't sell everything. I couldn't turn it into a rocket or a restaurant. I could draw income, invest in ways that didn't set fire to people's lives, and bring my own boring competence to a thing built of other people's work. Karina's lawyer, a man whose Instagram featured cigars and quotes about warrior mindsets, sent me a 4-page letter that said humiliation 10 times and punitive 9. Alondra, my attorney, small, precise, allergic to adjectives, wrote back with 3 cases and 6 statutes in the sentence. There was no reasonable expectation of privacy in a policy slide. We went to mediation because courts like it when you try to be adults. In a glass room on the 5th floor of a building near the river, a mediator named Charlene wore reading glasses on a chain and said, "Parenting plan?" and then corrected herself when she realized there were no kids to rescue from the wreckage. Asset division, she said. Emotional harm, Karina's attorney said. Policy harm, Alondra replied, and I try not to smile because I shouldn't. We divided furniture in days. We rewrote our lives into lines on paper. Karina asked for a gag clause. Alondra said no. I didn't want to fix my mouth shut because someday someone's son-in-law might need to hear a story about not setting a room on fire. Karina cried once in that room in a way that finally sounded like crying and not like performance. It broke me in a way that wasn't useful. After, on the sidewalk, she said, "Say you're happy." "I'm not," I said. "I'm relieved." "Is he everything you wanted him to be?" she asked, mean and soft in the same breath. "Dean," I said, dumb then corrected. "Victor, he's dead, Karina." "I meant the version of you who doesn't have to compete with rooms," she said. "I never competed with rooms," I said. "I just didn't want the rooms to replace me." In the days after the mediation, the city kept going because that's what it does. I rode the lakefront trail until my legs went rubber and the wind turned my lungs into a complaint. I stopped in at Parsons for a chicken sandwich I ate without looking at my phone. People were on dates. People were lying and telling the truth and paying checks and going home. And most of them would never sit in a glass room and talk about humiliation with a stranger in a cardigan. I kept a promise to a dead man. Not the one about the closed room, the one at the bottom of the letter, be better than me. It's easy to misread a line like that as blessing or curse. It's just a directive. I called Janelle and asked if the foundation had a budget for an external audit of their policies around donor access and staff boundaries. "We do now," she said dry. "You offering to write the check?" "I'm offering to write the check and not ask for a plaque," I said. "You can ask for a dog," she said. "The Animal Welfare Fund is going to be flush." I laughed and then didn't, because that's what grief feels like when it turns into usefulness. I wrote a check, my first of that size, to a rescue in Bronzeville where the kennels needed repair and the intake had outpaced sense. We funded an unseen hands grant at the foundation, money earmarked for security, compliance, and the kinds of boring things that keep rooms safe. We set teeth in the policy because teeth matter more than posters. Karina moved out. She took the Le Creuset and a print of a lake at dawn and the dress that still looked like water. She left the coffee mugs and the sound our building makes at 2017 a.m. when the boiler turns over and the radiators sigh like old men. I found one of her cigarettes in the pocket of a coat I should have dry cleaned last winter. I held it like a relic and threw it out because you can love a relic and still not want it burning in your house. One night, a month after the gala, I sat at the bar at the Violet Hour because the chairs are too tall there and force you to sit with a spine. A woman took the stool 2 down from me and ordered a drink with rye and words that made the bartender nod like a congregant. She recognized me, the way people in this city do if they're orbiting the same institutions with different budgets. "You didn't make it messy," she said. "Everyone else did." "I delivered paper," I said. She raised her glass. "To paper," she said. "A dying art." "I hope not," I said. "It's the only way to build a bridge anyone can walk across without a guide." She asked if I hated Karina. I told her the truth. I didn't. Hate is exhausting. It's a job I don't want. I said, I wanted to be married to someone who didn't need rooms to tell her she exists. She said, "We all want that," then laughed at herself because that's almost never true. Sometimes, on a run, I passed the Field Museum and think of the night the policy slides lit a room full of people who literally write policies for other people's lives and finally had to look at their own. The board did what boards do, formed a subcommittee, hired a consultant, printed a glossy brochure called Our Values, Our Rooms, and posted a photo of a retreat at a conference center where the trees look like stock photos. It would be easy to be cynical. I try not to be. Stopping the car is still better than letting it coast into a wall. Karina texted once, months later. I'm doing comms for a startup, she wrote. No boards, no donors, better coffee. It wasn't an apology. It was the human equivalent of a thermometer. Here is my temperature. I replied, I hope they deserve you when you're kind. She wrote back a single word, trying. We ran into each other outside the Art Institute one Saturday when a line for the new exhibit did that Chicago thing where it wraps around the block and everyone complains together like community theater. We did the dance of X's, we're not enemies, the small talk that proves you've both escaped your own worst versions. Do you still check the logs at 3 a.m., she asked, because Karina always understood my work even if she didn't respect how much of me it took. Only if something beeps, I said. I don't beep anymore, she said with a smirk that made the air tilt, then added, at work, before I could make it a different kind of joke. Good, I said. Beeping's for machines and microwaves. She laughed right, genuinely, and for a second I could see the woman in the dress before she learned to hear applause as oxygen. Then a friend yelled her name with too much joy, and we both used it as the out it was. I didn't become noble. I became a man who sleeps better. I started going to a shelter on Saturdays to walk a dog named Moose who failed obedience school because he refuses to respect the concept of a straight line. Moose taught me to hold the leash lightly but not lazily. There's a difference. Once in a while, when someone at work says we need to do something for optics, I hear Victor's voice and answer, for safety actually, and watch them recalculate in real time. Optics fade on contact with air. Safety sticks. If you're wondering whether the money made me happy, it didn't. It made me free enough to pick my hours and my fights. It made me immune to certain rooms. It did not teach me what to do when it's 2013 a.m. and the apartment clicks and the city hums and a ghost of a woman who loved rooms before she loved me walks past my table and sits on a chair we bought together and then disappears because she's a person, not a ghost, and she lives across town now. What I learned is this: humiliation is when a mirror gets put in the right place. Revenge is putting it in the wrong one. I didn't want revenge. I wanted a mirror. I wanted the room to look at the rules it wrote and realize rules aren't for other people. Did I enjoy the night the room finally shut up and listened to paper? Yes. I enjoyed it the way you enjoy a bridge holding when the truck goes over it. Relief is its own flavor of joy. I know there are people who think I should have burned it hotter, sued louder, projected faces on dinosaur bones, taken victory laps with my hands up and my shirt open like a prize fighter on Michigan Avenue. There are also people who think I should have shut up and eaten my dignity because dignity is a dish wives cook and husbands make a face at once, then eat forever. Both kinds of people have podcasts. I didn't make my choice for either. I made it for the quiet of my own life. So here's where the story lands. I listen better now. To beeps, to rooms, to dogs, to policy, to my own chest when it wants me to take a walk instead of a stand. I'm not cynical when institutions do the paperwork to become better. Paperwork is boring. Boring is safe. Safe is a bridge that holds. I put money where it makes rooms and kennels measurably kinder. I thank a dead man for teaching me that sometimes the only way to keep a house from burning down is to turn on the lights and let everyone see what the wiring looks like. And if somewhere in this city a woman in a lake-colored dress sits at a table and hears a, "It's not you, it's the mission," and answers no with a spine she didn't have before, then the night at the field did more than shift funds. It shifted gravity. That's all I ever wanted, for gravity to stop pretending it was optional. What would you have done? Would you have kept your head down and whispered warnings to the right people? Or would you have put the mirror on the stage and walked away while the room learned how to see? Tell me in the comments. If you want more true stories that hit like a clean cut, tap like and subscribe. It tells the algorithm this kind of honesty belongs in the light.